So this is Sanjay Shrivastava. I'm the CEO of Vocarium, and with me we have David Lin. And we're going to talk about, thanks once again for being here for the webinar. So just quick bit about the agenda. So I will go ahead and do some slides, 15 minutes. So this is targeted at those of you who might not know about Vocarium at all. And then after that, we'll go through the demo of our data science lab, and then we'll open it up for questions. So please feel free to go ahead and ask questions through the presentation. It'd be great if you can use the Q&A function to ask your questions. So first of all, for those of you who don't know, what does Vocarium do? We are in the business of providing virtual labs. And what we mean by virtual labs is the space for the learner where you can deliver data for them, compute for them, guardrails. And guardrails means you can deliver budgets and policies for the learners. And budgets and policies could be to make sure that the expenses don't go out of control. Provisioning, we deal with everything to do with scaling and termination. So when the learner comes there, we'll make sure that the resources are there. And then we worry about data persistence. So make sure that when the user comes back to the lab, then they can start from where they were. And since these labs are used in the learning, we have a pretty comprehensive set of roles that you can create for these labs. For example, there's an admin role, there's a teacher role, there's an author role, and you can even create a custom role. And then we worry about how the user is authenticated. So they can be authenticated either through our own mechanism, through LTI, through SAML, and through our own API. And these labs, and also what's unique about Vocarium that we realized from day one that the labs do not exist in isolation. So Vocarium was designed to be integrated to provide sort of comprehensive learning environment to the user. So they might be, for example, some lesson content, and you can integrate there right there, or you might need labs for performance-based exams, or you might need labs for the in-class sort of teacher for the in-class sessions. We do provide the broadest category of compute. So our labs, the biggest thing about our labs is that you might be able to find some programming labs or cloud computing labs, but we do provide it all. They are designed to be tightly integrated with different learning experience, a point I just made. And there's network, you can provide network level isolation for compliance. And what we mean by that maybe if you are bringing a commercial tool, or maybe you are bringing a data set which is proprietary, so you can launch these in completely isolated data centers. Also, since these labs are designed for learning, all these labs comes built in with rich assessment suite. Hopefully, you'll get a sense of it as during the demo. And then you can deploy. There's a flexible deployment model. And again, hopefully this becomes a little bit clear on what we mean by that. So you can deploy them already, as I mentioned, in different modalities and different contexts. So here are some of the labs. Today, we are going to talk, we're going to give you a demo on data science labs. So, so our two most popular labs are data science labs and cloud computing labs. We also provide programming labs. So this is where the learner can come in to learn, all the languages like Python, Java, C, C++, JavaScript, and etc. We have our VDI solution, which is both for Windows and Linux. We deliver it through our DCV technology. We have big data labs, and what we mean by that is specifically that you can launch Spark clusters, and your learners you can use the Sparks. The learners can work on their lab, and then they can submit their jobs to the cluster, which are fully managed. Machine learning, what essentially means is that we have you can launch machine learning jobs on any framework and maybe with a dedicated GPU. Cybersecurity labs are becoming more and more popular. So there is a rich suite of pre-built images and you can use that to construct a personal cyber range, which for the learner, which might include both Linux and Windows machine. And as I was mentioning, that cloud computing is one of our largest labs. So we have, at any given point of time, more than 1 million learners are learning on Vocarium, and at almost half of them tend to be learning cloud computing. So cloud computing, for cloud computing, you support both AWS and Azure. And what we mean by that is that you can specify that the learner gets, let's say, $15 or $50 worth of cloud of budget for a lab, and you can fully constrain those labs with policies so that the expenses again stay in control. Database, this is once again, as you can imagine, these days this is a popular lab for us, where we provide built-in database. We support 4 of them: MySQL, Postgres, Neo4j, and DynamoDB. And hopefully, as a part of the demo, I'll give you a sense of how we integrate it. There's a robotics lab, not super it's like not used that much, but we have a class in Colombia which has been running for a few years, where thousands of learners come in and learn robotics. Essentially, we deliver a ROS-enabled environment. Kubernetes is becoming more and more popular. This is from an administration perspective, where you can launch a Kubernetes cluster, which is essentially typically a network of 3 nodes, 1 parent and 2 worker. Full stack lab, this is especially for our enterprise customers, is becoming where they want to teach their employees with the latest and greatest in full stack practices, including CI/CD, Git, and we provide a full stack lab basically delivered through a container. Docker administration is actually a lot like Kubernetes. This is meant for you to deploy your Docker environment. Game engines, so this is a little bit more aspirational. We don't have a current production deployment. For everything else I mentioned is used. Game engine, we are ready for Unity and Unreal Engine game development environments, and we are hoping that we will see real classes soon. So let's just talk about data science lab, which is kind of the focus of this webinar. So when we say data science lab, we mean typically this is a Jupyter Notebook environment, and where you can deliver data through various sources. And the sources could be a database. You might be upload a large data set through, say, a CSV file. It could be as much as tens of gigabytes, or you might deliver it through some sort of a cloud storage like AWS S3. Then for compute, you might run the job locally on a Jupyter Notebook, or you might launch the job, let's say, on one of those cloud services or a Spark cluster, which Vocarium provides. So this is essentially, what we mean by a data science lab. And these labs, once again, you can integrate them in your learning environment, and it comes built in with all the assessment capabilities. So once again, what's unique about our labs is that the assessment and collaboration capabilities like NB Grader, which I'll show you later on, and inline comments are all sort of built in. Data sources, as I was mentioning earlier, are integrated. You can deliver compute environments. And there's a robust roadmap. So we see this as I was saying, on the top 2 labs that are being used by on our platform, cloud computing, along with cloud computing. So we hope to do more data warehouse integration. So for example, you should be able to easily say that the data is delivered from, let's say, Snowflake, or you can get proprietary data sources. Occasionally, someone will come to us and say they would like to make their data available for these labs, and we would like to make make integration analytics tools easier. So, for example, with a Power BI or a Tableau. Once again, these labs were designed to be integrated, not as a standalone entity. So when we say integration, we have a fair amount of integration with MOOCs. So for example, we have classes where tens of thousands of learners come in, especially on edX, but also on Coursera, where they learn something and then do the labs. So I think if for those of you who who are listening to one of the videos before the webinar, we were talking about our Coursera labs in partnership with AWS and deep learning. Skill-based exams, so especially due to COVID, a lot of performance-based exams went online, and there's a fair amount of those get done in Vocarium, and there's a lot of capabilities built on it. Often these are proctored exams, so there's some amount of integration with other proctoring services, something which Vocarium does not provide, but we do have integration. Training and boot camps and hackathons, essentially what we mean that are workshops where you might need a lab for say for 2 or 3 days. So there are features built into how do you deliver. There are issues about identity and the resources, how do you manage budgets and all the good stuff. Maybe we have some specific features like fleet management, which is being used for that. For research labs, these labs were designed so that you can do large scale work. Syndication, so essentially what we mean by that, some of our customers will deliver a content and lab in one place and then distribute it. So there are the capabilities for that, and virtual campus labs. So you can use that labs in place of your on your campus labs. So there is a rich set of infrastructure to deliver these broad set of labs. So the labs are delivered through one of these virtualizations, one of managed applications. So these are applications like Jupyter Notebook and RStudio, and say a programming ID that we manage. And when we say manage, it means we will manage everything to do with it, including the packages, and we will install it and we'll keep it up to date, and we'll worry about scaling. Cloud labs, so this is I already talked about, where we provision a lab with some policies and budgets around it. Custom network of containers, so you can bring your own Docker images, or you can use one of our own Docker images, and you can build a network of containers. And you can build a network of virtual machines. For network of virtual machine, one of some of the use cases that I talked about are cybersecurity labs, maybe a Kubernetes or Docker labs, and managed batch schedulers. So these are the so for things like maybe machine learning training or big data jobs, you have to you might need to be able to schedule those jobs and maybe come back later on and see the results. So we are integrated with lots of learning platforms. So Coursera, edX, Emeritus, Great Learning, Simply Learn, Udemy, and Udacity. So in a lot of these, when you go there, sometimes a learner might not even realize that the labs are being served by Vocarium. And these labs there are some examples here, like certified Kubernetes administration, AWS fundamentals, and data science, programmings. Some of these labs like Georgia Tech's intro to Python programming, we have tens of thousands of learners come in and learn Python. We have a large presence in 1,000+ academic institutions worldwide, and we deliver industry in standard ID. So one of the things which is different, we do not believe that you can deliver one environment for learning everything. So what you'll notice is that we'll provide IntelliJ, VS Code, Cloud9, Jupyter, RStudio, Eclipse, MySQL Workbench, and lots of others environment, which is specifically suitable for the learning objective. Assessment. So we'll not go through this in great detail in the demo, but hopefully I'll give you some sense of the assessment capabilities of the platform. So you can do auto grading, which will show in as a part of our demo. You can do manual grading. There's a built-in plagiarism detection. You can provide inline comment, peer reviews. This is a pretty popular feature on the platform. You can do some gamification using leaderboards. There is actually a case study from Cornell. It's not used on our website. It's not used that often, but it's amazing the level of engagement it can drive when it has been implemented. And more recently, over the last couple of years, we have implemented even multiple choice. So for some labs, assessment auto grading might be hard to build. So you can ask the learner to do a lab and side by side give them a multiple choice assessment. Exams, as I mentioned, there are features which are specifically focused on delivering exams on the platform, which means, for example, you can say, I'm opening this exam for next 2 days. And once you start the exam, you have 90 minutes to finish the exam. So, or you can do a fully synchronous exam. So for fully synchronous exam, this is from pre-COVID days. This is an SUTD Singapore. You'll see some, where hundreds of learners came in at the same time on campus, and they did the exam. And this was a fairly challenging project for us, but we're very proud it was very successful. We are integrated to all the LMSs using both LTI 1.1 and 1.3. So we rolled out 1.3 at the beginning of 2021. And I know a lot of our customers have already moved to 1.3 or they're moving to it. And this has been used for integration in Blackboard, edX, Canvas, all the different LMSs. But in some cases, customers are using our own Vocarium's custom APIs because maybe they are building some sort of a learning tool. So we support that too. Cloud computing, as I was, and I especially want to talk really quickly about cloud computing, because I was saying apart from data science, this is one of our biggest lab. So we'll deliver managed cloud credentials. So learners does not have to create an account to use their credit card. You can specify the policy. You can use CloudFormation or ARM, Azure Resource Manager, to pre-build to launch a pre-built environment for the learner. You can give them credentials so they can use it for CLI SDK. And we worry a lot about managing budgets, and so that the learner stays within the specified cost that you specify. So we deliver both single tenant or multi-tenant infrastructure. And single tenant infrastructure, I was making the point earlier on, where if you want to, there are reasons why you might want to go to single tenant, because maybe you want to bring your own AMI, maybe you want to bring your own Docker image, you might want to learn a licensed server, or you might want to build, you might want to bring a proprietary data. Or we have a multi-tenant infrastructure where typically you can launch, the lots of containers that we build, as well as applications like Jupyter Notebook and things like that, as I was mentioning. REST API. So we're a very there's a rich suite of REST APIs. So you can let's say, especially if you're building your own application, you can integrate Vocarium as a plugin. And also these REST APIs are used often for, let's say, updating. Maybe you are managing the content in a Git repo, and you can use it to update the content. So this was the presentation part, and I will just go and quickly see if there is any questions before I dive into the demo. I just want to look at the chat really quickly if there's anything. Yeah. Okay, so let's go to the demo. What I have done for the demo, I have two browser windows. Here I have I'm going to show you as a teacher, and this one I have this window has, I'm enrolled in as I'm showing as the student view. So as you can imagine, in this course, Vocarium Donor 2022, there are no assignments and there's no content. So let's go ahead and create a content. Now, once again, I'm not going to be talking about integration with LMS, and unless there are questions, and then we can show it. But just want to see how we would create data science lab, specifically Jupyter. So let's go ahead and start with creating a really simple Jupyter lab. And we'll call it Jupyter. And in Vocarium, you create an assignment, and then we create a parts. Parts are basically problems. And so we'll call it Jupyter. And then you specify what we call lab type. And if you notice, there are some managed applications like Vocarium Standard, Elite, Jupyter Notebook. I won't go into a lot of details where you can pick, or you can pick either a container or virtual machine. So once you pick container, there are lots of images which you pre-install, which you can, but for this purpose of this lab, I'll go ahead and pick our Jupyter Elite lab type, and essentially do a save. And one more thing, I will just to simplify the interface, I will say the user is not going to submit their lab. And then let's go ahead and publish. Looks like I did not save my part, so I had to go, I forgot to hit save there. Let me go Jupyter Elite, and I'll do a save. This always happens in demos. Okay, the save part has been updated, and we'll just go ahead and publish the assignment. And then once it's done, I'm going to switch to a student view, and I'm going to reload the screen. So hopefully what should happen is that the learner should have access to this one Jupyter assignment. And as you can see, there's no content here, but the learner can go and create a new notebook. There are lots of different kernels installed. So let's say, if we create a Python 3.7 notebook, and you can say print hello world, and then it should be able to hopefully run it. So that was kind of your basic notebook. But let's just go ahead and create another now assignment, and this time we will create with content. So let's assume you want to provide some content to the learner, so they have some starting point, and we will go ahead and set the lab type to Jupyter Elite. This time, make sure we save it. And then I'm going to turn the no submission on again. And we'll go ahead and turn the submission on later on, so go through that. And I will go through this configure workspace. Now, this is the file system we provide where, as an educator, you can prepare the environment for the user. So for example, whatever goes in the starter code, the learner sees when they start their assignment. So I'm going to upload one of the examples.ipynb, which I have on my machine here. And then we'll come back to the rest of the directories later on. And let's just go ahead and do an update. Update in Vocarium terminology is essentially same as deploying. So you can use this environment for testing, and when you're ready, you hit an update, and now it's ready for the learner. And we will go and publish the assignment. And let's go back as a learner. So if you notice, they have one more assignment to work with, one more lab. And this lab, if everything is working correctly, then it should have the example here. So once again, this is a notebook which you provided for the learner. Let's go clear all the outputs here. Why is it not clearing? Anyway, so we will go ahead and we can just run the cell. And so this is a notebook. Once again, the user is starting from starting from an empty point, but you can provide some content. So, and then let's go ahead and create another notebook. This time we will add, say, assessment to it. So we'll say Jupyter with assessment. And we'll create a part, but we will go ahead and go with manual assessment. So right now, Jupyter Elite again, I'll save this part. Let me go ahead and publish this so I don't forget it. And then we will go to configure workspace. And this time I will add some instruction for the learner. And the way you add the instruction is that in the docs directory, you can upload a README, either Markdown Markdown, TXT, or HTML, or PDF. So we'll upload some instructions and maybe upload another starter code, another starting directory for the learner. For example, let's see what plot examples here. So, and since uploaded, we will go ahead and update it. Once again, this is our deploy functionality. So hopefully it gave you a sense of, some other directories here, which is the docs and the, I guess, in the starter code, which I've already talked about it. Let's go back as a learner. And now you'll see they have another assignment called a lab called Jupyter with assessment. And this time they should get some instructions. So here, as you can see, there's an instruction which is not, and they were given a plot example. So this one, basically what we are showing is that things like NumPy and Matplotlib is a part of the submission. Let's go ahead and maybe we'll change something here. Like instead of dark turquoise, we'll say red. Hopefully this will work. So Matplot is building, so it'll take a few seconds. So now if you notice there, because I did not turn the submit off, the learner has a submission. They have a submit button here. So while this Matplotlib is building here, let me go ahead and submit this. So now we can provide assessment. Now, one of the things which I just realized that I did not provide a rubric for the learner. So how would we, so let's go ahead and create some rubrics here. So if you come here to the grading section, you can add grading criterion. We'll call it quality. We give them a score out of 5, and maybe performance. We'll give them a score out of 10, and we'll do a save part. Now this is once again a instructor view. So now I can go to the dashboard and look at all the submissions of the learner. So in this particular case, there's only one learner. And if you notice that I'm using the same email just so that I don't have to switch out a browser both as a learner and as an instructor role. So now as an instructor, I can see not only see the student submissions, but I can see, if you notice, is red here. So, but I can also now run this is a notebook, so I can run the students' work. And based on their work, I can give them some score, maybe overall comments, and do a save here. And also something people like a lot is that you can give a comment in the middle of the code for the learner. Let's go ahead and save it. I'm going to switch the view back to the learner and see what it looks like from a learner perspective. Okay, if you notice, the grades are not here because I believe I have to go now. I did not publish the grades, so I have to go switch and say, yeah, publish grades on. You can, one of the features, for those of you who are familiar with Vocarium, one of the features which you added recently, not only you can actually publish on a schedule. So you can say after due date. So we didn't used to have it. You had to manually publish the grades. So now that the grades have been published, if I go back as a learner, I should see that the learner got overall comments, and they got 4 and 7. They got a score of 11. And so now if I launch the workbench as a learner, I can see, yeah, actually, I just noticed here, because Jupyter Elite, we do not support code comments. So if I were to switch the notebook to Jupyter Notebook, It's actually, and I'm going to reload the learner screen here. I'm a little puzzled by that. I was expecting to see the code comment here, and okay, this plot examples. Okay, right here. As you can see, there's a code comment which I entered as an instructor. So I guess I just didn't scroll it down enough. So here's the comment which you entered. So actually, we do support in Jupyter Elite, but for a second, I thought maybe that was the problem. But so here you can see now you have code comment. Now I just noticed that I have got rid of my window as an instructor. Let me launch another one. So let's go ahead and now create a notebook. With this time, we'll do it with auto grading. We'll do the same thing. We'll set the part name does not matter if you only have one part. So we'll say Jupyter Elite. Let's go ahead and save it. And we'll publish it. And let's go back to our configure space. Now, this time, I'm going to upload to the work directory a notebook which I have called factorial.ipynb. And this is set up for auto grading. And this notebook, since it will also need some package, so I need to upload, and I'll show you there's a zip file here. So this is once again a question which get asked, how do you deliver data? So this one we are using it for a package, Python package, but you can use it for deliver data. So whatever you put it in public data or public, the learner will see it, and you can put in, let's say, gigabytes worth of data, and everyone gets a read-only reference to it. So this particular case, they have a PyTest package, and you see there are some simple Python functions here. So let's go back and launch the Jupyter notebook that we just uploaded and see what it is as an instructor. So this particular notebook, the example is that the user is supposed to implement recursive and iterative functions for computing factorial. And if you notice here, there is we have basically we have path here, resource, SNLA, public. This is where we uploaded the package, and we don't want the users to change it, so we can make it read only. So what you'd notice is that all these cells now have a tag, the NB grader tag. So if it's a markdown cell, it can be the read only or solution. If it's a source code, you can say read only, auto grader, or solution. So if it's a solution cell, you can actually put a tag called begin solution template and end solution. And what the platform will do is it will extract this out. So you can, first of all, you can run your test, make sure your answer is correct, and then you can extract it through a release process, which I will show. And or you can mark a cell as auto graded test. So in that case, the platform expects the name of a cell and the score. And if any of the assertion is triggered, then the learner will get a 0 on this rubric test 1. Otherwise, they'll get the full points. So, and in the body itself, you can put a pragma begin hidden test and end hidden test. This is not Vocariums. We are just implementing the Berkeley NB grader methodology here. And then you can put an assert here. And whatever you assert, then if it's triggered, then the learner will get a 0. So in this particular case, as you can see, we are asserting that the factorial 3 is 6. And same thing here with actually implementing functions. So once you have done, you can run your you can run your notebook to make sure everything's working correctly. And then when you're ready to, you hit release notebook. So what release notebook has a few options, which I will not go in through it, but let's just, I'm going to, the show traceback, I'm going to turn it off, because if you keep it on, then when the user sees the report, they will see a traceback, which might give away the test. So let's go ahead and do a release. And the release essentially extracts this notebook, saves it to the right place, including the starter code, and gets it ready for the learner. And then we'll do an update, which is once again our version of deploy. Now we are ready to publish the notebook to the learner. I see it already published it. Grades publish is off. I'm going to turn it on. And let's go back as a student, and I'm going to refresh the screen here. And if you notice here, Jupyter with auto grading assignment is there. And let's just go ahead and look at the notebook. And this notebook, if you'll notice, the system has like extracted your answers and put auto graded test, do not remove this cell. And it has extracted all your solutions. So let's go ahead and go through this. There is we'll execute this cell, which you're not supposed to change, as a read only, so learner cannot modify it. And then we'll go ahead and say the answer is 6. And you have written, as a part of this, you have written a simple check, sanity check for the learner. And then there is an auto graded test. So let's just go ahead and submit the notebook. And what should happen is that the learner should get, on one of this auto graded test, they should get their full points. But since they have finished, correctly answered it, but it should be 0 on the other 2 tests, which. So this, once you submit it, and if there's an auto grading being done, then these get scheduled in our batch servers. So if you notice, they got 1 out of 1 for test 1, and it was 0 on the other 2 tests. So the next test here is write a factorial function using recursion. Let's go ahead and copy the answer so that you don't have to watch me type. So I'm just going to the teacher view, and I'll copy the answer here. And we'll just go ahead and submit it. So this time the test 2 should pass, and the test 3 should still be 0. So this is 1, and as you can see, there is a grading report which the platform prepares, which says your solution looks okay here, your solution is correct, which was a part of the assertion. So hopefully that gives you an idea how the auto grading can be set up. And if you notice that I just talked about the data, only one source of data here, which is how do you deliver data using, let's say, a file. But so now let's assume that you wanted to deliver, you wanted to teach how to use data from say a MySQL database. So this time we'll create a notebook and actually deliver a database. So let's go ahead and do Jupyter. And I realize I'm running short of time, so I won't leave some time open for questions. So Hopefully you can do this quickly. And I'm going to actually turn this database on, and we'll say there's a MySQL, we want to deliver a MySQL workbench to the learner. And I will just, you'll see we need a start button to start the database itself. And let's just go ahead and do a save part. Let me publish it. And let's go to configure workspace again. And what I will upload a notebook which I have, which will interact with the database here. And also we will initialize the database. And the way you initialize this database is by uploading init.sql file in the public directory. So the init.sql is a simple SQL here. So let's go ahead and update and see what it looks like from a learner perspective. We'll reload the screen here. So now the learner has a Jupyter notebook with the database. So this particular notebook, as you notice, it now the system has put a MySQL with a red dot. Essentially, red dot means that the database server has not been started. So now I can hit start lab. This will actually start a database and initialize it. Should take a few seconds. Basically, we are launching a Docker container for the learner, so the learner can have full administrative access to it and do whatever they want with the database. So now it's green, which means the database has started. And it is, if I click here, you will notice that actually these are the credentials which has created. So this is the host, and this is the port which the database is available. But so for interacting with the database, also the platform does it drops the credentials in this file called .my.cnf. So we have written a little Python to parse it and then connect with the database. So we'll just go ahead and do that. And then using the PyMySQL to interact with it to show you that if I do that, so actually this was a notebook that we had initialized. So as you can see, it's right here. So this is how you can teach, maybe as a part of data science, you can deliver data using database. And the last thing which I want to show you, which actually brings together both our cloud computing and our data science lab. So let's say Jupyter with cloud. In this particular case, we're going to deliver a cloud credential to the learner. And maybe instead of, maybe you'll use one of the container labs, which has this Jupyter. We're going to deliver it via container with the Jupyter Python container. And we are going to deliver a cloud credential. So I'm turning off, saying, okay, deliver an AWS credential to the learner. And let's go ahead and say the learner gets a total budget of $5. And we'll again turn on start and stop buttons. And we'll go to configure workspace. And I have some notebook ready, which I'll show not download, I need to upload. It's called tweets.ipynb. And since we have a notebook, one more thing the platform expects is a policy file. So as I was saying, this policy file, which will constrain the cloud portion of the lab, what the user can do. So this is a JSON object, which I'm not going to go into detail, but as you can see, it is saying that the student policy, they can do these things, including they can launch comprehend, which I'll show it to you. So let's go ahead and update. Obviously, we can go into more detail is a Q&A, or you can ask us for a separate demo. So I think I didn't, in this particular case, I forgot to publish the lab. Let's just go ahead and publish it. And I'm going as a learner, and I will refresh. As you can see, there's a Jupyter with cloud. And this particular, just to show you, instead of Jupyter Elite, if you remember, we launched a different lab, which we call our container lab. And so this time we are launching Jupyter lab here within container instead of Jupyter Notebooks. So we support both. And I see that the cloud is still red here. So I think I might have forgotten to turn the start lab. The start button is here. There's some configuration after. There's so many options that I'm missing here. So let me just go ahead and actually switch to, I'm going to switch to Jupyter Elite here just so that we can get past this issue. Oh, actually, it was just taking a while. So the cloud is there. If you notice there, the AWS actually, so the learner, it has started the AWS lab, and also it has this CLI credentials, which you can, which is now dropped in this work environment. So we have a notebook here called tweets.ipynb. We will say error starting. I think I just changed the lab type in the user. Let me just go ahead and start it again. I will call it Jupyter Elite. We'll save the part. And let me just go ahead and exit. Refresh the screen, see if it. Okay, so I was just worried. So the lab is there. I just switched to the lab type to Jupyter Elite. So if you notice here that it has got, it is using, this is import Boto 3. So using the Python SDK to connect to the AWS CLI. Now, just like MySQL Workbench, where we're dropping the CLI credentials, the database credential in the .my.cnf file, which now the code could use. In this particular case, we are dropping the credential in .aws. So that's how you can connect it using the Boto 3 package here, right? And this particular case, it is launched using the Comprehend service. If you're familiar with Amazon, as a part of their machine learning service, they provide they provide a whole bunch of services. And just as a trivial example, we will send a tweet, a sample tweet, and this the Comprehend service will detect key phrases and entity. And so let's just go ahead and run it. So we'll run this cell here, run this cell, and then it will. So as you can see, it detected the phrases and the entity here. So I think this is important. Hopefully, I wanted to show it to you that what you can do, and I think we believe it's going to get more and more important. That from your data science lab, not only you can get different data sources, but you can launch jobs maybe for machine learning or for big data in this cloud using the cloud services.